In a world without a name or a backstory, where all the floors are covered in 6 inches of water, lives a girl whose motivations are unclear, who receives constant buffs from a mysterious telephone that's never explained, who sets out to collect fellow assistants for an unknown reason, to go defeat monsters for an unknown reason. To find out more, maybe read the wiki, because you won't find the answers in Achroma Tides. Out now for Android and iOS. Hey, Shrike here, and seriously, wow, this was a ride. A roguelike gacha with action combat, but picking it up was a whole different story. Let me start by saying that moving forward, Wuthering Waves will be the standard to which I hold every action combat game I'll try, and Honkai Star Rail will be the standard to which I hold all turn-based titles. It may seem unfair, but these games have raised the bar of what's acceptable and in some cases even possible in a gacha game. Plus they're free, and any game that's put out in these categories will be directly competing with them. So game designers need to do something better than them, or offer us something that these games don't have. Okay, let's start with the fact that there's no PC client. Huge pet peeve of mine. Many players won't even give a game a try if it doesn't have a PC client. Just calling it a mobile game doesn't mean people actually want to play it on their tiny little screens. Genshin Impact is technically a mobile game, one of the biggest and most successful. But most people don't play it on their phone, they play it on their PC. It may be for the best though, because on a PC the base graphics would be more obvious. Outside of the combat stages it was fine, artwork looked crisp and nice, while in battles though it was abysmal. And changing it to high in the settings fixed it a little, but it's still not great. But next let's talk about the gameplay. I wasn't kidding in the intro. You just appear in this world which for some reason is always partially flooded and nothing is explained. Then there's a telephone and the roguelike is introduced. And this works well mechanically, but story-wise it's never explained why there's a telephone there or who might be on the other end. In fact, the only thing that is explained is how the combat system works. And that's a nice segue. The combat system would be fine if it were entirely different than it is now. Honestly, you drag the screen to move and tap the screen to attack, which has the effect of being unable to move and attack at the same time. And speaking of which, you get 3 potions per stage, which is an interesting mechanic. You need to be strategic about how and when to implement them, but you can't use them if you're actively attacking. Each time I had to mash the potion button 5 or 6 times and ended up dying because of it. The potion mechanic would work very well with the difficulty scaling. The mobs are actually pretty difficult, especially the bosses. Well, they would have been if I hadn't been able to level up a character to almost 40 within the first 5 minutes of playing. And she wasn't a limited character or anything, and I still evaporated anything in my path, even bosses. The gacha system, appropriately named Gacha, is actually pretty cool looking, but has very poor rates. The chances of getting a character at all are 0.104167%, and 1.25% for the limited rate up character. Everything else will be the gear. There is a gear system, and that's mostly what you'll get from the gacha. I've done 30 pulls and I've gotten 1 character, Arya. She's of the fire element, and the elements are fire, water, earth, wind, light, and dark, pretty standard. And the gear is pretty similar to SOC, but maybe closer to Honkai Star Rail. You have 5 slots, up, down, left, right, and center, and then a separate slot for a different type of gear that's more like Star Rail's light cones, or if we're comparing it to Wuha, then weapons. And as for the amount of pulls, we get a lot of rewards early for completing stages, but I can see that plateauing late game without constant events or the like. They have a unique resource called an hourglass that seems to be able to be used to recover energy or re-roll a telephone buff. And I actually couldn't care less about the buffs. They never felt like they made any difference, so I eventually just clicked through them blindly. I was deleting everything easily enough anyway. But I could see them being useful for recovering energy. Along those lines, I will say the UI was just fine. Clear buttons and menus, easy to navigate. And finally, I wanted to find something this game does really well, where it shines. And I think I got it. It's quick. You can jump in and into a battle in literal seconds, almost no loading time. And the fact that you can play entirely with one hand could be a plus. You could pull it out while grocery shopping, for instance, or while watching a boring movie while holding hands with your loved one. I know, I'm reaching, but I do feel bad. This game would have been fine if it had come out a decade ago, but Genshin and Wuthering Waves raised the bar for these type of games. And now this just isn't good enough, I'm sorry to say. 1 out of 10, would not recommend. Next game I'll be reviewing is called Wizardry Variants Daphne. Will it fare better than this one did? Stay tuned to find out. I'm gonna fly. See you in the next one. Bye.